This episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast is presented by our new Sports Spectrum Increase 52-week devotional, inspiring stories of faith from the world of pro sports. If you're looking for a devotional to go through with yourself, maybe to go through with friends, family, maybe you have a child who loves sports and you want to go deep with them in their spiritual journey, well, I want to encourage you to pick up the 52-week devotional, the Increase 52-week devotional. It's available at Amazon and at theincrease.com. That's a great place to go, theincrease.com, and pick up your copy of the Increase 52-week devotional. Athletes from the world of professional sports, people like Justin Simmons of the Denver Broncos, James McCann of the New York Mets, Matt Hasselbeck, the longtime NFL quarterback, Dan Orlovsky, the ESPN NFL analyst, Semi Ojeleye, who's with the Milwaukee Bucks in the NBA. Athletes like those are featured in a devotional form once a week. You can go through it with your friends or yourself. It'll encourage you in your faith. It makes the perfect gift. Again, it's on Amazon, or you can get it at theincrease.com, our 52-week Increase devotional.
This is Sports Spectrum, the intersection of sports and faith, where we bring Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
And hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. I am Jason. So glad you're tuning in to our Sports Spectrum podcast today. My email address, jason@sportsspectrum.com. If you'd like to reach me directly, jason@sportsspectrum.com. Maybe you have a guest idea for a future show. Maybe you have a topic that we should be discussing, or maybe just some feedback on today's conversation with Clay Scroggins. You can email me, jason@sportsspectrum.com. And we're going to talk leadership today with the aforementioned Clay Scroggins. He is the lead pastor of Buckhead Church in Atlanta and the author of 3 leadership books, including his latest, The Aspiring Leader's Guide to the Future, 9 Surprising Ways That Leadership is Changing. It released back on January 11th of 2022, and I loved this conversation with Clay. Let's bring him in right now and have you hear our conversation on leadership with Clay Scroggins. Hey, Clay Scroggins. Welcome to Sports Spectrum, buddy. How are you?
Good. Jason Romano, what's up, my man? Good to see you. Good to be with you.
Yeah, it's good to be with you as well. Congrats on the new book in 2022 here in the new year. Excited to talk about The Aspiring Leader's Guide to the Future, your 3rd book. We'll get to it in a second. But first, I just got to ask you, has the city that you live in come off of their high of an Atlanta Braves World Series championship?
Are you kidding me? Of course not, man.
Even though there's a lockout and we don't know what the future holds for baseball, you don't care.
I know. No, 100% no. I mean, there's one of the Braves accounts that I follow. It's not the official one, but about every other day tweets, "Hey, just a reminder, Atlanta, we won the World Championship." I mean, like we are, yeah. And I'm a lifelong Braves fan, so I mean, I went to game. It was Halloween night, and that was game 5. They could have clinched that night. That was when who hit the grand slam? Duvall hit the grand slam in the first inning, and they ended up losing the game. But I'm there with Christian Stanfield, worship leader at Passion City Church, and then another buddy of mine who's a pastor. Yeah. And we're with our kids. We're like walking around the neighborhood and stuff. And he looks over at me and he's like, "It's kind of killing me that we're not going to the game tonight." And I was like, "Same, bro, same." So our wives overheard us and they go, "Y'all should just go." Well, we didn't have tickets, so we were going to have to just buy them off, one of the secondary sites or whatever. So yeah. I think I paid like $1,200, which is the most expensive. I mean, by far the most expensive ticket I have ever bought for anything. And it was just wild. Our wives, that was the best part. They were just like, just go. Y'all should go.
Wow.
And so we went, and we were losing our minds when he hit that grand slam. And then, of course, they lost. But that's a good, lesson of sports. You pay all that money, spend all that, take that big risk, and then they don't win, but it was an epic memory. And then they won the next game in Houston. So,
all right. So I want to dive into you as a Braves fan for a second here. That's a fascinating story. Probably one I would not have. It's weird. Maybe I would have, because I don't live real close to the teams that I mean, I guess I live a couple hours away from where the Celtics play. I live a couple hours away from where the Mets play. And those are two of my favorite teams. So I guess I could have driven day of to go see them if that was the situation. $1,200 is a lot of money, but at the same time, the opportunity to watch your team clinch,
that was it.
Game, that was the reason, right? It wasn't just go to a World Series game. It was to see them clinch at home.
Exactly. We were like, I mean, this is genuinely, it feels like a once in a lifetime. And it has been, what was it, 96 when the Braves won last? So that was, 25 years ago. We were both, kids at that time. So, or teenagers. Yeah. We were like, that was what did it for us. We were like, this is a once in a lifetime experience. And I mean, the money part was a real struggle. I don't even know. I slightly hesitate. Like, why in the world did I just share that amount of money? Like, I'm kind of embarrassed by it.
Yeah.
But it was real, man. It was like, that's how crazy we were for it. But yeah, I mean, as a Celtics fan, it's like,
well, I'll tell you my Celtics story.
It's not once in a lifetime.
Yeah, I think I remember in 2008 they won the NBA championship. That was the Kevin Garnett. Anything's possible.
Paul Pierce.
Yeah, and all those guys. And I didn't go to a single finals game that year. And I don't know why. I just didn't. In 2010, it was the rematch. It was Lakers Celtics again. And I said, okay, I'm going to one of these games somehow. And I didn't spend as much as you did. Let's just say that. But the Celtics had the middle three games in 2010. So Lakers had the first two. Celtics had the next three. Lakers had the final two. So it was game 3, game 4, game 5 that I was going to go to. And I said, let's go to game 5. Better chance of them maybe clinching. Who knows?
That's right.
And I bought the ticket right before the finals started. I bought 2 tickets and they were a couple $100 a piece, face value. I actually knew somebody from the NBA, thankfully, who allowed me to pay face value. I think my number would have been probably 500 to go up to pay. I mean, who knows? Maybe I would have, if they were clinching, I probably would have gone where you went. But I went to game 5. The series was tied 2-2. They won the game, but they didn't clinch, right? And then they went back to LA. They lost game 6. Kendrick Perkins got hurt. They lost an epic game 7 and ended up losing the series. But that to me is my favorite sporting experience in person ever, because I got to go to the final home game of the year in the NBA Finals and see the Celtics beat the Lakers in person.
I mean, that's insane.
It was insane. But I wonder for you, is this the greatest experience, even though they lost, that you've ever had as a fan in person?
It's not, because I grew up in Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Oh, okay.
So
I see where you're
my
going.
family are crazy Alabama fans. So in 2000, well, it would have been beginning of January 2018 when Alabama played Georgia. So living in Atlanta, I mean, just the amount of Georgia fans, and it's a large.
That was in Georgia
base.
Too, that game, right?
And it was at the new Mercedes-Benz, brand new at the time.
Yes. That was the Tua game? Was that the Tua game?
That was the Tua game. So, I mean,
that's pretty great.
My mind. 2nd and 26 in overtime. He throws the bomb to Devontae Smith. I mean, yeah, so I would have to say that was probably my favorite, most incredible sports memory, being at that game.
How do you go back to a congregation or an audience or your people that live in Georgia and just tell them roll tide? And
I do not.
You have to
I don't
treat
say
that
it.
very, very carefully, don't you? Tread very lightly there.
I preached yesterday at Athens Church in Athens, Georgia. I definitely don't say anything about it there. I mean,
say nothing about Alabama. You just go in, preach your message, and get out.
That's right. That is
so
exactly
funny.
right. But I do. My in-laws are actually staying with us right now, and I was telling them that I was coming to talk to you, do this interview with this podcast, and they said, "Why are you on that podcast?" And I was like, "Listen, I feel so great. I feel like I'm on here as a sports fan more than anything. So I love what you do. I love the interviews you do. I listen to a lot of them, and Yeah, I'm just really glad to get to talk about sports and a little bit of leadership today, even.
Well, listen, leadership transfers into the sports world. I mean, I
Hmm.
mean, in every way possible. And your new book is called The Aspiring Leader's Guide to the Future. Well, I think every young athlete, in fact, I just watched an interview this morning with Jason Tatum from the Celtics. He did a thing with Sage Steele on ESPN, and she was talking to him about growing into being a better leader and how
Hmm.
the outside noise in some ways was criticizing Tatum in his leadership. And he's 23 years old, even though he's been in the league 4 or 5 years. He's 23 years old still. So that's an aspiring leader when you think
Yep.
about an NBA player making a ton of money and having a huge amount of influence and certainly a huge amount of talent. But that's an aspiring leader. So let's talk about the book, Aspiring
Yeah.
Leader's Guide to the Future. Why this book? Because I loved your other two books, How to Lead When You're Not in Charge and How to Lead in a World of Distraction. Now you have this one.
Well, 2020 is part of it. I mean, we all went through so much change. I mean, the world just drastically changed, and it was, the world was already changing just with the way, the technology changing, social media changing, the amount of information being created, the way we communicate, relate to each other, the way we work with each other. And then all of a sudden the pandemic hits, people, remote working. I mean, even in the sports world, everything was contactless.
Yeah.
So many changes in the way we relate to each other, work together now. I started researching that concept of how is leadership changing. It's clearly changing. And what I found was anything I read, any article, any blog, any post, I would get the same message. Leadership is changing. Well, of course it's changing, but the question is, well, how is it changing?
Right.
And so that's what I wanted to do. Is I wanted to go, all right, I'm not going to write a book that's saying, hey, pay attention, everyone, leadership's changing. I wanted to capture my view of how things are changing, and not because I'm a prognosticator, because I'm a fortune teller, because I know what's coming. I mean, my guess is just as good or bad as anybody else's guess.
Sure.
But I think it's worth hanging a dartboard on the wall. I would say that for anybody listening, it's worth I would say for Jason Tatum, it's worth trying to figure out, how is leadership changing and how can I begin to develop into that kind of leader? Because the future is going to demand a different kind of leader. And most people, particularly, anyone 30 and above, most people are calibrated for a world that no longer exists. We learned a leadership style or a management style that worked at one point, but it's going to work less and less in the future as the world continues to change.
What is that yesterday leadership that doesn't work or is starting to not work as well? Explain that a little bit.
Well, there's a lot of cliches that we could throw out that, dress for success, never let them see you sweat, fake it till you make it.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that, maybe the simplest way to say it is that command and control style, that I'm the boss and you're going to listen to me. I'm a leader. I have authority, therefore I am a leader. The boss or the leader, the one in charge, is supposed to look a certain way, is supposed to act a certain way. I'm supposed to always exude confidence. I can't ever let anyone see any weakness. I think that style, that bravado of leadership, I think was celebrated in an era. And I do think there's a lot of redeeming qualities. So there's nothing wrong with having confidence. There's nothing wrong with being stable in the midst of chaos. There's nothing wrong with, there are times when we all have to fake it until we make it. But I would say there's a better way coming. That's what I'm most excited about. I think it's not there's an old way and now there's a new way. I think there's a lot about the old way that still works. There's something powerful about shaking somebody's hand and looking them in the eye. There's something powerful about exuding confidence, even in the midst of uncertainty. But I think we're evolving and growing and developing into what potentially is going to become a better style, a better way of leadership.
It was interesting as I was looking through the book, and it released on January 11th. So congrats, by the way, as we talk here in 2022. You also have an amazing chapter in the book that I was really, this one was the one I gravitated towards, and it's called "Even the Goats will have a coach. And I love, the GOAT cliche, if you will. Unfortunately, it's being thrown around way too much because the whole idea of what,
we've exhausted it.
yeah, because GOAT stands for greatest of all time. And yet we're
Like
calling
one, like there's one. Yeah, exactly.
there's one, Michael Jordan, right? Or whatever. And there's one
Yeah.
in whatever sport, pick a sport, and it's one. And we call everybody the GOAT, the GOAT, the GOAT. It's fun to say. But I loved how you said even the GOATs have a coach, and I think it pertains well to our audience. Can you kind of talk about that?
Yeah, sure. The book is really it's the subtitle is 9 Surprising Ways Leadership's Changing. So I tried to just take, hey, let's find some ways that leadership worked, and because of the way the world is changing, let's start pointing to a new way. So there was, with my parents' generation, your parents' generation, the idea of having a counselor, a coach, a therapist, it was almost taboo. I mean, there's a stigma attached to it. You have to get a coach or you have to get a therapist or a counselor if there's something wrong with you. But I use the example of Tiger Woods in 1990. Well, his career is fascinating, but 97, he won the Masters by, 12 strokes. Yeah. And then 98, he hires Butch Harmon and says, I want to do a complete overhaul of my swing, which is insane to think about because at that time, he had won 25% of the tournaments that he had entered.
Right.
Which is, he was already on his way to greatness, but it wasn't enough for him. And so he hires someone to help him see what he can't see, to help him fix what he knew. Well, it wasn't even necessarily broken. Help him fix what he knew could get better. Butch Harmon told him, hey, if you're going to do this, I would advise you to take the year off because you're not going to want to play while we're doing this.
Right.
And in a way, Butch Harmon was right. In 98, Tiger only won one tournament. And so there was definitely, there was evidence that he was working on his swing. 99, he, I think, won, 7 or 8 tournaments. And then 2001 does the 4 majors in a row. Jason, this is crazy. When I started looking at this, he won 8 PGA tournaments in a row, which is insane. I mean, to me, that is as impressive as winning the 4 majors in a row. But clearly, he just dominated at a new level. But all that to say, if Tiger Woods needs a coach, you and I need a coach. Yes. And we need someone who's down the road who can see what we can't see. We need someone who can help us fix what may not even be broken yet. And one of the fads that I'm really excited about that we're seeing in the business world and in organization, even in sports management, is the idea of reverse mentorship. The idea of someone who's 55, 60 years old going, if I'm going to continue to develop into the kind of leader that the future is going to demand, I have to know what a 25-year-old thinks like and what a 25-year-old sees that I don't see. And so it's not just about finding someone older, finding someone that has gray hair, finding someone that's down the road, but it's about the idea of humility, the idea of finding someone who can help you see what you can't see. Because that little phrase, what you know won't hurt you, it's the dumbest phrase out there. I mean, what you don't know won't hurt you. Yeah. Of course, what you don't know is going to hurt you. It has hurt you. It will hurt you. It's probably hurting you now. So that's really the idea of it.
Well, it's interesting too, as a person, I'm in my late 40s now, and I think about, I would love to have a 60-year-old kind of coach me and teach me and mold me a little bit. I don't really have that. I have some people that are that way, but I don't have like this one sort of sage that I could talk to fairly regularly. So I aspire to have that, right? I think I had that more when I was younger in my 20s. I don't have it now, and I aspire more for it now. I think I have a lot more people who are in their 20s in my life that I can learn from and watch and see what works, and people who I work with, people who I used to work with at ESPN, people who I'm just friends with through other people, some people in my church, that younger audience. And I get so, I don't know how you feel, Clay, but I get so fired up when I'm around young people, and I don't know why older people don't want to learn from younger people. Because we always talk about, as growing in our leadership, we have to find somebody who's older. But I love what you said there about the importance of learning from people who have not quite been around the block as many times as you have.
Yeah. Well, I just think it comes from this there's a quote that I use in the book, an excerpt from a book by Kevin Kelly, who founded Wired magazine. He wrote a book on the 12 technological shifts that are happening that we have to pay attention to. It's a really interesting read. But one of the things that he references over and over again is the rapid change in technology is going to keep us in this, he calls it a newbie state, which, if you play video games, that term being a noob, is something that you throw around, use to talk smack to somebody who is new at it, not as experienced. But what he says, which I think is totally accurate, is, think about that app that you opened that you haven't opened for a couple of months. You open it up and you go like, wait a second, where's my menu? Like they've changed things around. I don't like this. The constant updates, the constant technological advancements. I mean, the thing that I just installed, and I'm late to the game on it, but I just installed a Nest thermostat in our house last week, Yes. I mean, you think about the way the home is becoming smarter. I mean, there are technological advancements that are going to change the world in a year or two that we aren't even aware of right now. I mean, the way 5G is going to change communication. And so it's going to keep us, what he says, I think is really brilliant, that it's going to keep us in this noob state where we are constantly having to admit we don't know, that there's so much I don't know. There's so much I have to learn. And instead of feeling bad by that, or instead of feeling embarrassed by that, to be able to have enough humility to say, hey, I can't know it all. I once could know enough to be dangerous. I can't even know enough now to be able to get by. I have to be willing to ask for help. I have to be willing to say, hey, help me figure this out. Whether you're leading a team, whether you just started a new job, whether you're leading a company that is in an industry that's rapidly changing, I think that the message, the foundational message is being willing. The leader of the future is going to be willing to have enough humility to say, I don't know. Will you help me figure it out?
Yeah, transfer that into the sports world, right? Because I'm thinking of a coach who's maybe my age or heading into their 50s, who's coaching. It could be in college, right, where you're coaching 18 to 22-year-olds. It could be in the NBA or, professional sports where you're getting the 25 to 30-year-old or whatever it is, and still trying to relate to them. And you see sort of some of these older coaches that try to, bring back the spark of a team, and it just doesn't work out, or they just don't connect, and it's just a different way that doesn't fit their mold or whatever. And bring that into the sports world a little bit, because I think that really just being able to adapt, like the newbie side of things, being able to understand the athlete of today, if you've been coaching a long time compared to the athlete of 30 years ago.
I was in the pickup line getting my kids from school last week, and there's a guy that was in my, I was a student pastor for a while, and he was a high school student. He was in our student ministry. Now he's like 29 years old. He's a kind of a YouTube influencer, and he and his wife are moving out to California for work. And she DM'd me a little surprise birthday party that she was throwing for him, a goodbye / birthday party. And so my kids saw me looking at it, and they're like, what is that? And I was like, oh, Katie's throwing a birthday party for Preston, and she's telling me I should swing by. I should come through. And I said, as I'm telling them about it, I voice text. I say, count me in. And they go, oh, Dad, cringe. No one says count me in. Oh. And I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to say?
And they go, that.
Yeah, exactly. What's wrong with count me in? Right. They go, you should just respond and just say, bet. Which, I mean, I have heard people use that. I would feel like
I'm never using that. I'm never using
it either. I say that. Maybe I will in a year from now, but right. I'll probably get on it when it's already gone. That's the way most 40 plus people do. But yeah, I would just say that's what you're saying is so true, that the rapid rate at which the world is changing, it is demanding that we ask for help, that we're willing to adapt and change. And the message is, you can't see it. You can't see how you need to change. And there's nothing wrong with admitting it. In fact, right. The kind of leader that's willing to admit it is going to be the leader that cultivates more influence in the future. And so if you aren't willing to get people around you that see down the road or see things you can't see or understand culture, society, relating to athletes in 2022, it's going to be impossible to lead with influence in the future. That Gretzky quote, I don't skate to where the puck has been, I skate to where the puck is going. That's what this is about. It's about becoming the kind of leader that the future is demanding, and you just can't do it alone.
Mm-hmm. Clay Scroggins is our guest on Sports Spectrum. The book is called The Aspiring Leader's Guide to the Future: 9 Surprising Ways Leadership is Changing. Give us one of those ways, one more of those ways that it's changing that is surprising, I guess, that would help our audience.
I like the chapter on conflict a lot. I like there's a chapter on vulnerability a lot. I tell the story of Angela Ahrendts was the CEO of Burberry and then became the senior VP of retail at a little company called Apple.
I've heard of it.
They sell quite a few products over there. Yeah, she's a remarkable leader, and she's one of the interviews that I did for this book. And I said, Angela, tell me a story about the way leadership's changing. And she said, well, I'll give you one that surprised me even. And we ended up having a long conversation about vulnerability and the willingness to show your weakness, the willing to lead with your weakness, and how to do that well. She was tasked with unifying the 70,000 retail employees at Apple, which is a pretty important role. But how are you supposed to do that? I mean, that got to be really challenging. Yeah. And she said, I decided to send out this little video series on Monday morning. I called it 3 Points in 3 Minutes. And it was just a way for me to let them know, here's some things that are on the top of my mind, things that I'm thinking about this week. So she said, maybe the second or third one that I did, I had this slim little video crew in my office. I'm in the middle of recording it. And she said, as I'm doing it, my phone rings. And I look at the phone, and it's it was her college age daughter who was in school in London. And she said it. So I felt like, when she calls, I want to get it. And so I just picked it up real quick. I said, hang on, guys, pick it up real quick. Hey, I'm shooting a video, but I'm dying to talk to you. I'll call you right back. All right. Love you. Bye. So hangs up the phone and then just jumps right back into the video, finishes it. So as they're wrapping everything up, she said, hey, you know what? I want to send it out just like that. And they're like, hey, we're Apple. We make beautiful things. Like, we can edit that out. No big deal. She said, no, leave it in there. So she says, sure enough, the next morning, she said, in my inbox, I had hundreds of responses from people, Apple employees, who said, Angela, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for showing us that you're a real person, that you are fighting the same battles that we're fighting, that you're trying to be a great mom while at the same time trying to bring your best work to your job. That's what we're trying to do as well. And we're so glad to know that there's someone that is in it with us. So I would say that's that idea of, 20, 30 years ago, don't let them see you sweat, never let them see your weakness. I mean, that was just the way we lived. And I would say it social media certainly doesn't make this easier because we show the best and hide the rest. Social media feeds this show off everything that's great about your life. But as a leader of the future, I think we're going to have to be willing to say, hey, I'm not going to edit all of my life. I'm going to leave the part of my origin story that is, the time that I lost my job, the time that we didn't win, the time that I didn't pass the class, didn't get into school, the time where I missed the shot. We have to be willing to show those sides of us because I just think we're more adept these days at sniffing out the phony, the fake, the imposter than we've ever been before.
Oh, that's a great, great story. And I think about, like, even just recording this podcast, you and I will record it. When I started it, I introduced you and said your name real quick, and I screwed it up. So I said, okay, take 2, start over. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hey, Clay, welcome to Sports Spectrum. And, we can do that in podcasting world or in editing world or production world and make it sound like, oh, flawless, perfect, great job, perfect edit. And I do edit a lot of the shows I do, but sometimes I'm not going to say I'm leaving that part in. I'm not going to. People can ask me if they want to hear what that sounded like. But I do think there is some real great lessons to learn from that video that she made. about, hey,
Mm.
you know what? I'm also a mom. I'm also a person who cares about my daughter. And that's really what comes first. Cause I
Mm.
saw it, when I worked at ESPN, people, I saw that their work would become their worship, or their work would become the most important thing in their life. And it meant not taking that phone call from their
Mm.
kid, who might have just needed to hear their dad or needed to hear their mom because work was too important. So I love that. I just think there's so many valuable lessons, and I can't wait for people to pick up the book and read and learn more. The Aspiring Leader's Guide, because this book, real quick, Clay, as we wind down, isn't just for the 25-year-old that's trying to learn how to be a great leader, but it's for people like you and I, people who are even older than you and I, that they can learn, first of all, their own leadership style and kind of grow in that way, but to also help them learn how people who are trying to become an aspiring leader can benefit and grow.
I sure hope so. I mean,
Yeah.
I really see leadership as there's this spiritual component to leadership that I'm an accidental leadership author. I never intended to do this. I bumped into this message, How to Lead When You're Not in Charge, in 2017. And I have loved getting to talk about leadership. It's given me a lot of opportunities to do that. But I didn't set out to try to talk about leadership. And sometimes the word even gets thrown around so much, I get
Yes.
tired of it,
Same
a
here.
little bit
Same here.
like you said with goats, the same.
Yes.
It's just when we use words so much, they sometimes lose their meaning. And I'm finding out more and more that we all, you're a person of faith, I'm a person of faith. I know we've got a lot of
Absolutely.
people that listen to this, and I know we have some people that are not that listen to this. But the one thing we can all agree on is we have this one life to live,
Yeah.
and this one life to live, there's something in all of us that wants to make a mark, that wants to impact other people, that wants to make a difference in the people that we're dealing with, that we're working with, that we're interacting with, whether we win or whether we lose, to be able to leave a positive legacy on the people that we're around is such an innate desire in all of us. And if you want to call that leadership, call it leadership. But that's what I believe leadership actually is. It's the ability to cultivate influence, to be able to move people to do what they might not want to do, to accomplish what it is they want to accomplish. And if we do not pay attention to the future, if we miss out on how leadership is changing, well, we're going to become just like Blockbuster Video, and we're going to, unfortunately get left behind and miss out on this huge opportunity that God's put in front of us to impact the people that we're around. So I really believe there's something more profound than just, this is going to help me make more money, or this is going to help me get promoted better, or this is going to help me, gain more authority. No, this is going to help me love the people that I'm around in a greater way than I could have before.
He is Clay Scroggins. The Aspiring Leader's Guide to the Future is the new book. Go pick it up. It's available now everywhere books are sold. Can the Braves repeat in 2022? As a Mets fan, I cringe even asking that question, because I'm certainly, as much as I loved watching so many of the people that I knew who were associated with the Braves win a championship, I don't want that to happen in 2022. But I think they're kind of loaded, especially when you think about getting Acuna back and just how set they are with that team and that lineup. As long as Freddie's back, which I presume he will be, that looks like
this town is going to revolt if they don't re-sign Freddie.
At the time of this taping, he is not re-signed, but everything's on hold because of the lockout. So I presume by the time this airs, a couple weeks after your book releases, that he still would not have signed because the lockout is still continuing. But you have to think they're in a position to repeat and make a run.
Well, everybody in Atlanta got so mad at Joe Buck because Freddie hits a homer at the end of the game in Game 6 when they clinch, and Joe Buck makes this huge deal out of the fact that Freddie's a free agent. And he's like, you might be watching the last time Freddie Freeman runs the bases for the Atlanta Braves. And all the Braves fans are like, Joe, are you joking me right now? Like, we're about to win a world championship, and all you can do is remind us that our best player is not currently signed for next year. But I mean, can they do it? I mean, for sure. But man, success, we all know this. Success from the past is no predictor of success in the future. And repeating in sports is one of the most challenging things to do because, there's so many reasons why, but, yeah, and then also the amount of money that the Mets have, I don't know. Eventually, that money's going to turn into wins.
Gosh,
eventually,
I hope so.
Jason.
I just would like to see the Braves and Mets like battle it out in late September.
Yes.
Heck, even in a
Yes.
playoff game again or a playoff
Yes.
series, and just have a little bit of that rivalry spark
back from the 90s. Yeah.
Spark back from like the 90s. Yeah, although it wasn't a real rivalry in the 90s because the Braves won every year, but that's okay. But you're right. It's so hard to win a title. It's even harder to win it back to back. So anyways, well, best of luck to you and your baseball team. But congrats on the book, brother. Really appreciate you coming on. I hope the book does amazing things this year. I know it's going to help a lot of people in 2022. So thanks for joining us.
Glad to do it. Thanks for what you do.
And thanks to Clay Scroggins for being here today on Sports Spectrum. Again, go get the book, The Aspiring Leader's Guide to the Future, 9 Surprising Ways Leadership is Changing. I love what he was talking about with vulnerability and the lady from Apple and taking the call from her daughter. I just thought such a small thing, but such a big thing in the sense of showing that, hey, I'm a leader and maybe I'm in charge or a senior VP or whatever, but I want to show you that, what's most important is my ability to be a parent and my love for my daughter and living that out, right? As she records that video and suddenly recognizes that her daughter called and she answered it and she left it in the video. And sometimes we need to do that. Sometimes we need to be vulnerable, especially as we grow in our leadership ability, right? And certainly our leadership influence, which was a word that Clay used earlier, and a word that I've said always in any of the books that I've written or talked about or people we've had on. Leadership really is influence. It's not title or status. It's influence. And the people that you talk to, whether they're older or whether they are younger, leadership is influence. So I appreciate Clay Scroggins for telling us 9 surprising ways leadership is changing. Make sure you go get the book. It's a great resource for you. And I know it will help you in 2022 as you grow as a leader as well. So we appreciate you tuning in. Thanks for joining us here today. Before we let you go, make sure you check out our website, sportspectrum.com. All of our content is there and it's all free. Devotionals, podcasts, articles, stories, great resources, all available at sportspectrum.com. And then click that subscribe or that follow button on whatever app you listen to podcasts on, whether it's Apple, whether it's Spotify, which is my preferred choice for podcasts, but I also like listening on Amazon Music and Amazon Podcasts, and Sports Spectrum's podcast is also there now as well on Amazon. So wherever you get your podcast, make sure you subscribe and follow so that you never miss an episode of our show. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time right here on Sports Spectrum's podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Stay safe. See you next time.